The United States has a long history of cooking up fictitious stories and lying to achieve its warmongering objectives. It started at the beginning of the last century, in 1898, 1899. The United States wanted to go to war and seize the rapidly declining Spanish Empire's possessions in Cuba and in the Philippines and in Guam. So they sailed, the United States Navy sailed a rather obsolete battleship into Havana Harbor, and the battleship blew up. We now know that that had to do with a defective boiler and had nothing to do with the Spaniards, and yet the United States blamed the Spaniards for blowing up the USS Maine. The rallying cry was "Remember the Maine," and the United States went off to war and still occupies the former Spanish colonial territories to this day, with the exception of the Philippines, which it begrudgingly returned to Philippine sovereignty after World War II. The lies about Iran have been perpetuated since the United States perpetrated an illegal and immoral coup against Prime Minister Mossadegh. We can go on. The Tonkin Gulf Resolution, which brought the United States into the Vietnam War. There was no North Vietnamese boats firing at the United States Navy in the Gulf of Tonkin. So this is just the game plan the United States uses, and it's used for a very narrow focus group, and that is to gin up the very nationalistic and xenophobic genetics that are intrinsic in Americans. It's very dangerous, and it has worked. It worked. George W. Bush used it effectively, as did his father, to go to war with Iraq both times, lying about various weapons of mass destructions and things and events that never happened. And we're seeing the same thing with Iran on a grand scale, particularly under the Donald Trump administration, which is dominated by both evangelical Zionist Christians and the Zionist regime in Tel Aviv that has long wanted to bring an end to the Islamic Revolution in Iran. It's important to note that one can lose count on the number of military adventures and acts of aggression that the United States and the West have engaged in since 1945, while Iran has engaged in precisely zero.